All right, let's do this thing. Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to this TopSoil Webinar. My name is Mitchell Hora. I'm the founder and CEO here at Continuum Ag, and today's webinar is about winter oilseeds, and very appropriately titled Bullish on Winter Oilseeds, because I've literally been saying that for multiple years, probably 3 or 4 years, that I'm bullish on winter oilseed production. Today we're going to be talking about pennycress, but camelina, winter canola. There's other similar winter oilseed crops that are kind of in the same category. Very interested in it, and I've been exploring opportunities for my family farm on should we be experimenting with some of these things, or is it time? And I was chatting with my guests, and I'll introduce here in a minute. I was chatting with these guys about growing it, and I'm like, why don't we just do this live for a farmer audience? Because rather than you have to explain the same questions every single farmer and over and over and over, let's do it in bulk and let's record it. So that's what we're doing. So, before I get into letting my guests talk about pennycress, a quick intro on Continuum Ag. We are a software company by farmers for farmers. We're really focused on providing the measurement, reporting, and verification for farmer carbon intensity scores. So quantifying a farmer's carbon footprint, getting that third-party verified. Today, it's mostly corn and soybeans for going into ethanol and biodiesel and whatnot. But as the markets expand, and as things like winter oilseed crops such as pennycress come to market, those are going to need CI scores and the same type of audit and stuff as well. So Continuum is also, trying to be proactive and be ahead of this, and it all takes data, of course. So pennycress has made some headlines. There's been some major investment in this space. Seems like it is on the right track here. And a lot of farmers, and me included, we joke that pretty certain that we can grow pennycress quite successfully because we grow it as a weed very successfully every year. And if it works as a weed and it survives well, maybe we can take advantage of this and actually harvest it. And obviously the final oilseed crop is going to be very different than the weeds that are freely growing out there here today. But anyway, we're going to dig into some of that. As you have questions, toss them in the Q&A function or in the chat, and we'll get to them. The guys got some slides put together that they are going to walk through. Hopefully get a lot of our questions answered, but we got some time here today to really dig deep into it. So Jason and Ricardo, we'll pass things over to you. You guys are the founders of the Pennycress Company. Early stage in all this, that's for sure. So that's a little caveat on all this, right? Early stage, learning through this and looking for farmers to partner with. And again, I'm bullish on it. I'm trying to figure out how should we approach this on our farm. And a lot of you farmers that are listening in today, maybe there'll be an opportunity for you as well. But without further ado, thanks, fellas, for coming on here today. And I'll turn it over to you and we'll roll.
Alrighty. Yeah, thank you, Mitch, for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here and to talk to you and the whole audience about pennycress and cover cropping. So, yeah, we're the Pennycress Company. And what we're doing is we're bioengineering the highest yielding plant seeds for biofuel. And so in this webinar, we'll talk about the plant, we'll talk about the market, and also how it would work growing pennycress plants with us. And so we are an early stage plant biotech company, and we're based out in Lincoln, Nebraska. I founded the Pennycress Company about 3 years ago, but that's actually the more recent part. For the last 12 years, I've been working on pennycress, starting with my PhD from the University of Minnesota. But I knew that I wanted to get this plant out there and all these discoveries to help out farmers and really just do some good in the world. And joined me is Ricardo.
Hi, Bill. I'm Ricardo Ramirez. I joined the Pennycress Company to help out with commercialization of the crop. So I'm on the phone a lot with biorefineries, looking to get some offtake agreements for future seasons coming up.
Yeah, and as far as the team goes, we also consider, you, the farmers, like part of it, like, similar to the 12th man. Like, the objective here is we want to build something with you, the growers, and we're really looking forward to hearing after and during even this conversation your questions, so we can build something that really helps out the soil and helps out the rural economies. And so the problem here that we're trying to solve is fundamentally a market issue. So low carbon feedstocks, we need more of them to, say, replace our traditional fuels, also, say, plastics, and of course, like the replacing diesel fuel and sustainable aviation fuel. We can switch to bio-based products. Now, specifically, aviation fuel or sustainable aviation fuel is what is really needed. Planes are very difficult to decarbonize, and there's been mandates throughout the world that are insisting that we switch to these more renewable forms of energy to power our planes. And also, if you think about gas prices and fuel prices for planes right now, we really need some more. And also, I'm sure Mitch will tell you more about this. There was recently, in the last few days, some pretty big breakthroughs for incentivizing oilseed crops and just biofuel crops in general. But the issue here is that we still need more supply out there. The current sustainable aviation fuels that are out there, they're really just led by used cooking oil and also animal fat. This isn't really scalable considering the magnitudes more that we'll be needing to use in future years. And so we need something that is logistically feasible. We need something that's scalable. And we need something like Pennycress. And so Pennycress is our solution. It has these penny-shaped seed pods, hence the name Pennycress. And the seeds, they're rich in oil that can be used for many things, from cooking oil to animal feed, bioplastics, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. Now, getting into the biology of the plant, it's a part of the mustard family, similar to canola, similar to broccoli and cauliflower. And as mentioned, the seeds, they have a lot of oil just from, millions of years of evolution and being in the wild. They have more oil than soy, which has around 20%, and they're already pretty competitive with canola. Similarly, the protein content is fairly high, and it has a stronger essential amino acid content than what we see in soy and canola. As far as the life cycle goes, we see it in the Midwest over winter. It's forming small rosettes, and then in the fall, and then over the winter, it will survive the cold polar vortices that we sometimes get. And then right about now, we can see pennycress plants flowering out in the field, and then soon, in the next couple of months, we'll be able to harvest it. So
Did you
pennycress,
say that in you guys,
oh
some
yeah,
of you guys' plots, it's already starting to kind of take off and flower and what it be? It's, I want to call it bolt,
yeah,
but that
that's exactly the term.
is it
Yeah,
term? Okay, so it bolts.
mhm,
So it's a rosette over the winter.
yeah.
Then in the spring it bolts, but it's already like bolted, already flowering here. On last part of March
Yeah, yeah, I've seen some of our pennycress plants. They're starting to,
already.
send up those main stalks and
Yeah,
warm flowers, which I'll get to in a bit. But that's also important for helping out pollinators, because right now there isn't really anything even planted in most of our
sure,
fields.
sure.
But pennycress, can also help out a pollinator biodiversity and therefore the whole entire ecology of your farm. So yeah, this plant, it's actually native to Eurasia about 400 years ago. When Europeans started coming over, pennycress was brought along with them. And yeah, as mentioned, it is mostly known as a weed, but what we're trying to do now is domesticate it into a cash cover crop. And so here's what most farms look like. Well, maybe the erosion isn't that bad, hopefully, but worst case scenario, they're barren, they're lifeless for a good 8 months out of the year. And then this is the story around 200 million acres where, we're either growing corn or soy in the Midwest. So it's not great because we're having erosion, we're having soil loss, we're having nutrient leaching, but also it's a missed economic opportunity here. But if we grow pennycress during this time, we are helping out the soil by putting in a cover crop that sequesters carbon, that increases biodiversity, and also reduces erosion, while allowing the farmer to gain money from this plant, in addition to all those ecological benefits, and also still be able to profit from the summer crops like the corn and soy. And so we're not the only ones who've been working on pennycress. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. It started maybe around 20 or so years ago with these institutions on the left-hand side of the screen, like University of Minnesota, where I got my PhD from. But you can see that interest has really been growing. In this graph, we're looking at publications, looking at, say, the biology of the plant, the agronomy and the agronomics of how to grow the best pennycress, also looking at the market and also the economics. And we're just seeing more and more. And all this work is supported by about 100 million research and funding from, say, like the Department of Energy, the USDA, and the National Science Foundation. But in addition, go
the
ahead.
group up at University of Minnesota, that's the Forever Green Foundation stuff, right? It's
That
kind of
is
tied in
correct.
under their work. Does it sit underneath their stuff?
100%. Yeah. So when I was in Minnesota, I was going to the Forever Green meetings. Pennycress is one of the key Forever Green crops. And what we're trying to do as the Pennycress Company is we're trying to get pennycress out to farmers faster than it would have been done otherwise.
Yeah, speed to commercialization stuff. And Forever
Mhm.
Green, they're like really early stage. They were the guys working on Kernza and other stuff too.
That's correct. And their focus is like more academic, like
Yeah.
trying to learn more about pennycress, Kernza, and their suite of around 12 or so other plants. But they're still a university at heart, and they're making connections with, say, startups, governments, and other stakeholders. But having like a arm focused on getting this out to farmers and really working with the technology from like a real world, like this is what farmers need sort of angle, as opposed to, will this help us publish the best papers? That's where we come in.
Yeah. And to your point, there's kind of a lot going in this direction. And the question was presented on, wait, is this CoverCrest? There's CoverCrest different. CoverCrest is a different company,
Correct.
somewhat competitors to you guys.
Correct.
I do have a relationship with the folks over at CoverCrest as well. My whole point of all this is I'm very bullish on the big picture. There's a lot of opportunity here, and in bringing opportunity and education to farmers. That's the point here. And yeah, I had a conversation going with these guys. Like, hey, I I know a lot of farmers, and you want to talk to more farmers. Hey, let's talk about it at bigger scale. But just for clarity, this is we're a very open and inclusive group here. We'll put it that way and move on.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. So what sets our pennycress apart from, say, the wild kind that you'll see in the ditches and such, and also from competitors, is really our technology. So it starts with this like 4-part pipeline where we're using AI-powered bioinformatics to, say, look inside the genetics of the pennycress plant and figure out what are the best genes to turn off and on. And then we turn those genes on and off with CRISPR gene editing. Um, and then also, we like the third step is to use precision agriculture technologies to breed better plants, get more data from the impact that pennycress is making for farmers, wink, wink. And then also, uh, the final part is working with the farmers and also the industry off-takers. We want to make sure that we are building something that farmers want to grow on the fields and something that is useful for these end users, like the sustainable aviation fuel and also the animal feed producers. And so uh, pennycress, like the great thing about it is that it has the benefits of a cover crop, but also brings money in for farmers. And so in the next 3 slides, that's what we're going to talk about. So we're expecting like net profit after, the expenses of harvesting, planting have been paid for. We're expecting around $50 to $100 per acre. And that's, again, on top of what you would be earning for your corn and soy that you're planting in the summer.
Yeah.
Also, with that corn and soy, having a cover crop like pennycress will decrease the CI score of those crops. Also, kind of harken back to last slide, with our tech pipeline, we're continuously getting better and better varieties of pennycress with higher yields and more profit for the farmers and more value for all stakeholders involved. And then finally, pennycress is a low input crop, not needing very much irrigation, fertilizer, or herbicide control. And so now looking at the benefits for your farm. So as a cover crop, again, helping produce or reduce topsoil erosion with its leaves forming some green cover and also the roots holding the soil in place. Also nutrients like nitrogen, they're left in your field for your summer crops. But also pennycress as a catch crop does take care of some of that excess and prevents it from getting out into the waterways. Also, with its roots, it's increasing soil porosity and also reducing compaction and overall helping out your soil water balances. Now, looking at the wider ecological picture of pennycress, it helps sequester carbon. We're estimating about a ton per acre, and with our added genome edits and improvements in breeding, we're expecting that to raise. Also, when I was doing my doctoral work, I was focusing on making pennycress flowers larger and to produce more nectar for pollinating insects like honeybees. So we're helping out beekeepers too, and all the other species of wild insects that are out there, which can help, make your farm more resilient against pest insects. Then also pennycress as a cover crop, we're designing it to suppress noxious weeds like the palmer and the cedar or red cedar that you might find in your fields.
So a couple things on this. One, it's my understanding that these flowers and stuff though are pretty small, pretty self-sustaining. That they mostly just pollinate themselves without having insects coming in. Right. That obviously that would be we like our pollinators. We want to be able to help support these populations, but it's not necessarily a requirement. Where, like, for example, if a farmer's going to grow pennycress, they need to partner with a beekeeper and like bring in bees. It'll do it by itself, I think. Right?
Exactly. So it's not like almonds, for example, or say strawberries, where you need to bring in some sort of pollinator. Pennycress is a mostly mostly self-pollinating species with around like 80% to 90% self-pollinating. So no, you don't need to bring in any pollinators. But it's what we see in canola, though, is if you do have pollinating insects around, which is also a mostly selfing plant, yields do increase. So that's part of the reason why, for me, like making the pennycress flowers larger was exciting, is because we could both help out pollinating insects with larger flowers, larger nectar droplets, but also increase pennycress seed yield simultaneously.
Got it. That's good. And then, suppressing weeds and stuff. One of the questions that I got ahead of time was from a farmer where they're talking about some of like the weed rating stuff at the state level and like state concerns on pennycress and pennycress being on some of these weed lists. How are you guys kind of approaching that? Because sure, the planting pennycress in a controlled system, it's going to control some other weeds, but on some lists, it is still on there as a weed. So how are you guys approaching that, and like any updates or talk about maybe that from a kind of a regulatory hurdle type of standpoint?
Yeah. So there's a few ways that we're going about that. So the first is like a management sort of way. So talking with agronomists here in Nebraska, for example, about pennycress and weed concerns, they're still pretty excited about the plant, saying that it's fairly easy to control with regular herbicides. Yeah, exactly. Roundup 240, whatever. And then also importantly, part of what we're really focusing on is making pennycress not weedy. Like we're getting rid of those traits that make it persist in fields. We're getting rid of, say, seed shattering that breaks, the seed pods open, making the seeds go onto your field so you can't harvest it, and so that the plant, seeds itself when you don't want it to. So those are like two of the main things about how we're going about making it not a concern. But the regulatory aspect that you mentioned, yeah, that's very important. There's a small handful of states that have some sort of legislation um, regarding pennycress. But the most, I guess, telling one for me about how this is going is Minnesota. So Minnesota, as I mentioned a few slides back, that's where pennycress research really started to take off, and they formerly, like in the '60s or so, which is when the regulations for pennycress, say in Nebraska, came to be. Um, so they've now changed the regulations to allow um, domesticated varieties to be able to be planted
Okay.
without any issue. And we're expecting that same sort of thing to happen throughout the US. If we don't get it done, we're sure that Covercress or any other entity out there will, because it's just such a great plant and it can do so much for farmers.
Seems like it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay. Oh, good. This is probably going to hit in on some of the questions. We got a lot of great questions coming in, and everyone keep them coming. I'm looking at them, and we'll answer them. But go ahead.
Yeah, so right here, our production timeline, as you can see, we're a little ahead of schedule on the farmer recruitment, but the three key dates that I want to highlight are planting, fertilization, and harvest. So planting happens right after those primary crops get off the ground, right at mid-September, early October. The earlier you're able to get pennycress into the ground, the more time it has to establish itself and the more yields you're going to see at the end of the season. Second is that fertilization that happens around mid-March. So pennycress is a nitrogen catch, so it will be using a lot of that nitrogen and fertilizer applied to your primary crops. However, we are seeing that you get better yields when you apply about 40 pounds per acre of nitrogen to the crop.
Yep. So
And
40 units nitrogen, but you don't necessarily have to apply P and K or sulfur or anything like that. Or are you guys early in experimenting with that, or it's just put on like urea or liquid nitrogen or UAN and color good?
yeah, right now it's looking like the nitrogen is the big one that it needs. It is. We are like everything looking at these things. However, right now it's looking like that 40 pounds per acre is what's necessary, and we're trying to also see what is the highest amount that we can produce with the lowest amount of inputs. So that's where that 40 fits in. The last date I wanted to highlight was that harvest. So that happens right before your primary crop is going in the ground, around mid-May is when pennycress gets harvested. It is key to look for that optimal harvest characteristics, which I'm going to highlight a little bit later, because if you let pennycress sit on your field for too long, seeds can shatter and you will see a decrease in yields.
And so hopefully everyone's in alignment here. We're obviously talking about next winter and trying to be proactive with creating some awareness that next winter there likely is going to be an opportunity to consider planting some of these things on your farm. And we're just jumping the gun a little bit before farmers get busy planting. It was either going to be we have the conversation now before we get busy with spring planting, or we got to basically wait till the summer, and then it's going to be like, yeah, now you got to decide and go time. So just so everyone is aware, that's why we're doing this now, just to be very early and proactive starting the conversation. Now you were just talking about shatter and loss and stuff. Matt is in Ohio, and he's got a question on that. He's asking about harvesting with a rotary combine versus, I think, the alternative being a draper head. Is there any specifics, or do you guys have experience on that yet, of how do you lower some of that loss? I don't think this would be something that is, swathed and picked up later or anything funky like that, to my knowledge. But any hot take on that, or is it kind of maybe too early to tell on what kind of header you got to have?
Yeah, so swathing, that is possible. You don't need to do it for pennycress, but like we're still, pretty early in terms of just agronomic research on this plant. And for like the header, like what typically is used is like a small grain header that could, say harvest oats or camelina or wheat, that kind of thing. Um, yeah.
Okay. And in the picture here, it's planted in 30-inch rows. But would you always plant it in 30-inch rows, or could you do it in either 15-inch rows or 7.5-inch or 7-inch rows?
Right. There is some room for variability and to like make it fit to what your farm is actually wanting to do.
I think we were even talking broadcasting it, weren't we?
That is also possible. You can broadcast, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So
Ricardo can
there's
tell you about
some
that.
options, on all that.
That's right.
Cool.
There's options.
Okay.
Yeah, so speaking about seeding, that seeding rate is about 3 pounds per acre. It is a small seed. It's about 1/16 of an inch to 1/12 of an inch, about the size of your canola. For seeding, you can use grain drills, combine seeders, air seeders, broadcast fertilization, and vertical tillage onboard seeders. The seed depth, we're looking at about 3/8 of an inch to half an inch, so fairly shallow. We're looking at a target stand of 4 to 7 plants per square foot, and that row spacing from 7.5 to 10 inches. So you can see that variability there. So establishing pennycress, all you need is 1 inch of rain within 3 days of planting, or equivalent to irrigation if you're not you're not keen on praying for rain. Once it is established, though, it does have a high drought tolerance.
I'm sure all the farmers that don't have irrigation just did what I just did and said, "Well, sorry, I'm not God and I don't control the rain." So, obviously, the answer is, okay. Hey, you got to try to plant it when you've got some decent confidence that you're gonna have rain, just like a lot of other cover crops and stuff as well, right? But like, what's maybe the approach to that, or how do you try to handle that? Because is it basically like in the fall, plant more so based on you're fairly confident you're going to get a rain to fairly quickly follow versus the day on the calendar being more important? Like, is planting ahead of a rain more important, or planting just based on the calendar more important?
Let's see, Jason, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it's more important to plant based on when it's going to get some precipitation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of what I'm thinking with this, and especially that you're seeing it so shallow or
mhm,
even broadcasting it, that having some of that moisture there is probably going to be important. That you're not seeding it deep enough into
yeah,
moisture. So that's why you pretty well probably got to have a decent rain fairly soon after it gets seeded.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we are testing some dry land farms as well, so we'll have more information as we develop.
I like it. Okay. There's a lot of questions coming in, which is great.
Amazing.
Okay.
So monitoring pennycress during that growth phase, it will scavenge for nutrients. Like I said, it is that nitrogen catch. However, that 40 pounds per acre in March is best for increasing those yields. You go to the next slide. And so this is the key slide right here, is looking at the characteristics to be able to tell when pennycress is at that physiological maturity. So you want to look at the pods. Make sure they're firm, golden brown to a grayish tan color. The seeds inside of those pods being hard and brown. Now the plant may still have some green tissue on there, so it's really important to focus on how those pods are looking. Overall, you're looking at a moisture content around 12 to 15%, with that harvest being around mid-May to early June. And also waiting too long will result in that seed shattering and yield loss, which we are working on currently in the lab to reduce.
Yeah, it may be a little too early to tell, but when we've been growing winter crops, we have not desiccated or used herbicide, before it's fully died down by itself. But is that a potential option to kind of speed it up once you're getting kind of close to that? It's almost all the way done, but hit it with a shot of herbicide to kind of speed the process up so you can harvest a field more consistently. Is that something that
you hit the nail on the head, Mitch. So if you go to the next slide.
Oh, okay. All right.
You're talking about the desiccants. Yeah, so paraquat is definitely an option to reduce that moisture content and reduce the seed shattering as well. So for harvest equipment, though, a standard combine with a small grain setting, so short tooth sieves and low fan speed. Okay. And then to terminate that crop, you could either till it into your field, mow it down, or hit it with a broadleaf herbicide.
Yeah, because, but once it dies down, it should be done. Like, those plants won't come back after harvesting, but you'll have some volunteer, I'm sure. You're like, no matter what, you have a little volunteer.
Yeah, we're hoping to reduce that as well in the lab.
So, but you were saying the combine, and Matt followed up with his question here about the inside threshing unit being, like you were just saying, have the sieves just super tightened down. Like, can you basically adjust your kind of normal combine to be able to harvest this, or is there going to be a requirement for some specialization in the combine itself, the rotary system, threshing system, that kind of thing? He's thinking a rotary versus a walker system in an old John Deere. The walkers that just kind of sort and walk the system out. We may have to go through that more later in experiment, but
definitely.
You guys have gotten in on that of details of the threshing system inside the combine yet.
Well, rule of thumb, if you've been able to harvest canola with your system, you'll be able to harvest pennycress.
Yeah. Good.
So for storage, you're looking for a dry covered area. And for delivery, we will organize for pickup and crushing within 14 days of harvest. We're trying to make that a quick turnaround right after harvest to get those samples ready.
Multiple people in the chat, including Matt in Ohio. We got RT. I don't know where he's at, but lots of questions on where does a guy need to deliver this or all of that. And maybe you have another slide on, but this is really the important one, right? So the farmer harvest it, store it for a while, maybe even in a wagon or a small bin, and then what's going to happen?
Then we're looking at getting some crushers to go on site to those farms, a small crusher, and then start crushing and load our stuff up. A lot of the seed we will be saving for subsequent generations, but in those later slides, you're going to see where right now what biorefineries have requested those pennycress samples, which we'll be delivering those in June when we have that. We have our harvest in at UNL.
Okay, yeah. So you guys have your own sites already growing right now out at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So you'll be proving out more of this here over the coming couple of months and have more experience to be able to speak to everyone with as they want to dig more into this over the summer. But you guys are planning on farmer harvest it, store it for a short period, then you guys actually come out with a mobile crush system and crush it like on the farm.
That's the plan for right now, correct. So going on to this slide, those pennycress producer clusters that we're looking, which by the way, I have to credit this 100% to you, Mitch. Out of one of those conversations we were having, you mentioned this and we thought it was a brilliant idea. So it is best to, if you are interested in growing pennycress, send over the waitlist link to your neighbor, because the more people we're able to get in the cluster, the lower costs we have on those logistics. You can share storage, you can share equipment as well. However, we also have a larger volume that we're able to move to those biorefineries that are asking for the soil.
Yeah. So Yeah, and for some context, there are multiple questions on this too. But yeah, when these guys first came to me and I took it, to and discussing this with Dad, um, it, these guys came to me saying, "Hey, we're kind of looking for a spread of farmers, kind of across a fairly wide area. It's very early stage here, folks, right? Like trying to figure out where's is going to kind of work best, and then the logistics and the agronomics and all this kind of stuff. And for us, it was like, well, if we're going to plant this, we probably only want to plant it on 40 acres or so, somewhere likely between at least 20, maybe 100 acres, but we're probably not going to do every acre right away with this or ever. However, then we're like, well, but in order to get out the combine and get it set the right way and store the stuff and have it worth it for you guys to bring in a crusher and stuff, it's like, man, it'd be really good if we had 50 acres and we had two or three other relatively local neighbors that also had 50 acres. And then, hey, we could go and custom harvest it for them. We figure out how to get the combine dialed in and only got to clean the combine once at the beginning and once at the end and go and harvest a couple of these. So that's what we're talking about with kind of the clusters and whatnot there. Being able to kind of work with a couple other people and navigate this together from a agronomic standpoint, but yeah, also from a crush and then having the oil and the logistics with the oil standpoint. And that's what Warren had a question on the minimum economic acreage. Do you guys have like a minimum that you're going after for some of these early adopting farmers?
Yeah, we do, which I think you'll be able to see it on the next slide.
Okay.
This is perfect. Hitting all these questions are all hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah. It's
so the production costs reimbursed are up to $155 an acre. So that is equivalent to a 1,200 pound harvest, $155. So at the current market rate of Pennycress, which is 12.8 cents per pound. So the reason why we're offering those production costs up to that 1,200 pounds that we're aiming for is that we want to reduce adoption risk as much as possible. So if you don't see those harvests that we're aiming for, you're not losing out. You get reimbursed for your cost. However, though, if you do see a harvest above that 1,200 pounds, we do offer harvest bonus at that same 12.8 cents per pound. So, for example, if you get a 1,600 pound per acre harvest, you're looking at about $51.20 per acre bonus. So that's like what you do is you get the 1,600 pounds, you multiply it by the 12.8 cents, and you'll see it's the $206.20.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah, there was some questions in the Q&A about that as well. So you guys are still looking at like kind of covering some cost and like having some minimums brought in, but then also having kind of a production bonus if you're able to get a really great yield.
correct.
Yeah, that's
Kind of covering the downside plus the farmer is able to participate in the upside.
And to answer the earlier question about like the minimum acreage, like around 40 acres is the minimum here. We'll like consider if you want to work with us and do less, but 40 that gets you like a truckload basically of pennycress.
Yeah. And it's a small amount of seed to begin with, so it works good on logistics. You guys can mail the seed, and then you end up with a truckload at the end.
Yeah. And we're happy to do more though, but we are limited, as an early stage company, in terms of how much seed we actually have. But our goal is to reach up to 2,000 acres for this fall. So yeah, and then after that, there'll be plenty to go around.
Yeah, because you're going to crush some, and like you said, you're going to retain some seed. So 2,000 acres this coming fall, and then keep scaling it up from there. So it's we're walking before we run here for sure.
Exactly. Well put.
Cool.
Hey, Mitch, could you hit the slide
Yeah,
2 times? That way it's complete.
Oh, I see.
There we go. So this trials and these reimbursements, harvest bonus as well, they are a bridge to our business model in which we are negotiating offtake agreements with biorefineries and animal feed purchasers, which we are then executing with our farmer partners.
I like it.
Benny?
And that's one of the things we were talking about. Like, this is going to be one of the limitations, I think, in scaling this up and just thinking out loud for farmers, right? Is it's probably going to have to be, eventually, it's going to be a lot of production kind of circled around a place where you actually have the refinery to be able to deliver it to. So eventually, that's going to dictate where things should scale up. For now, it's small enough scale and early enough that that's not as big of a limiting factor, but I just assume over time the cluster is going to be based on where the offtake exists.
Yeah, correct. Based off of where those off-takers are and also where those logistic pipelines are. So if there's a rail, for example, that connects direct to California, then that's also an option.
That could work too. Got it.
So the companies, the biorefineries that we've been talking to, or the ones that have requested samples, are World Energy, Our Side Energy, Montana Renewables, and Hasco Oil. They are a manufacturer of industrial lubricants. These are the companies that we are talking to now to negotiate those offtake agreements for those future seasons.
Great.
We also have, oh, you had a question?
No, I was going to say shout out to my boy Corey that works at Montana Renewables.
100% shout out to Corey.
Yeah.
We also got Seed Request from Pono Pacific. They are a land management company in Hawaii, and Par Pacific, they're a biorefinery in Hawaii. They're looking to produce about 20% of the SAF used on the island. With about, they're aiming for 100,000 acres of oilseeds like Pennycress.
Wow, that's cool.
Yes, it is. And we, for 45Z and Pennycress, 45Z has been driving a lot of the demand for Pennycress. It lists Pennycress as an eligible primary feedstock for biodiesel, renewable diesel, propane, naphtha, and SAF. So it's been really helpful in getting these conversations going. Actually, we have a conversation with a biorefinery out of California right after this call. So it's
yeah, and there's an anonymous person that put in a question about this on the CI of Pennycress versus other stuff, and like what the guys have here, the IRS has their list of eligible feedstocks that'd be eligible for 45Z. Pennycress, winter canola, camelina, they are all on that list. But what we are, so which is great, right? And opens up the pathway for Pennycress to have a seat at the table here. What is missing is the updated feedstock calculator from the Department of Energy to actually give us the ability to put a CI score on the Pennycress. So there's a pathway that IRS says Pennycress is in, but we're just waiting for the updated calculator to be able to then know what is the CI difference going to be. But you guys have some initial take on the CI of Pennycress, I believe, right? Versus
Yeah, we
like
do.
corn, for example.
Yeah, so CI score for Pennycress, and of course, it depends on the techniques you use, and also with our varieties, we're wanting to get lower and lower. But
Yeah.
at the baseline, we're expecting a CI score of around 30.
30 for the fuel that's being produced, or what?
Yeah, at the
30
end.
in units of what? Okay, 30 CI of the ending fuel.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's like 18 or so, I think, if you're looking at just, say, like the seeds.
Yep. Okay, so the seed itself having a CI of 18 versus corn being at 29. That's where you get at. So ethanol today has a CI score of about a 50.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
ethanol has a score of 50 versus if you had renewable fuel based on Pennycress, it would have a score of 30, so about a 20-point drop. And then the CI, well, and that's, I'm generalizing here, but then you have, just looking at the Pennycress versus corn, maybe 11, 12-point reduction just by the nature of the crop itself.
Yeah, correct. Then also camelina, CI score is a little bit higher than Pennycress. Yeah.
And obviously, all of this ends up being then driven also by, are you going to just no-till this, which I think
Right.
should be able to just no-till it. The energy usage is super low and nitrogen
Mhm.
usage is super low. Part of the problem is just going to be the actual per acre production on a pound level. Like, obviously, your volume of production is going to be significantly different than a corn. You're just getting a higher oil content though versus some of these alternative, winter oilseed crops. That's the play.
Yeah. Yeah, more or less. Like corn, in terms of the oil that it has, like 4%, pennycress, in the 30s.
Yeah.
And also it's a cover crop, so it has all of those other
Yeah.
benefits too.
Some of that benefit. A little caveat on that. We're anticipating that this would be able to be utilized and counted as a cover crop. We'll have to see how the details work out with, since it's being harvested, how will that get factored in? But yes, there highly likely will be something there. But even so, the opportunity to expand the revenue coming in on a per acre basis, uh, those kind of things are exciting to me. So.
Mm. So if you're excited as well about Pennycress, you can join our winter 2026 cash cover crop program waitlist at thepennycresscompany.com/farmers. So Jason, also if you could send that over the chat, that way everybody who's on the call can have it in front of them.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we can toss it in there. I think are we done on the slide for now? We got a whole bunch of questions to get to.
yeah, it is definitely time for questions. I'm very curious to know what everyone's thinking.
We got a whole bunch of them. So, and folks, keep tossing them in there too. I'm just gonna start at the top and for whatever, because I haven't read through all of them to know what all we got here. Okay, so given the CRISPR technology, does this affect the meal portion of the pennycress? And I had a question on this too, like, what are you editing for? So oil content, yield, the meal functionality. Like, what are some of those things that you're using CRISPR to gene edit for?
Yeah, so right now there's four main traits that we're going after, all involving sustainability and yield. So the first is larger seeds, so they're easier to process, easier to plant, and also you get higher yields. Also, we're looking at longer roots to help sequester more carbon and reduce erosion. There's also increasing photosynthetic efficiency, so we get more robust plants and, again, higher yields. And then we want to alter plant architecture so we can fit more plants per unit area, again, increasing yields and increasing the amount of CO2 sequestered per acre.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, what does your field trial and certification process look like for your domesticated pennycress products? How many years have been running, and with each variety? And you kind of spoke to it a little bit. Again, very early stage, but maybe speak to some of that process here a little bit.
Sure. So the plants that we started growing in October of 2025 for the Pennycress Company, that is our first planting, and we'll have our first harvest coming up in a couple of months from now. However, there's been about 20 years of agronomic research done on pennycress. A lot of it done in Minnesota and Illinois and other states in the Midwest that we're building upon, basically.
And is that where the seed came from that you guys grew, or like the seed that you planted that's growing right now? Where did that come from? And
right.
like, did it come out of those research programs and stuff? So it's already kind of been worked on, or is it starting from scratch?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. So we've collected germplasm from the USDA. Also, we have our own like wild isolates that I found just traveling through the Midwest and other parts of the country in hopes of getting a plant that has traits that are favorable for planting.
So a little of both, and then, but do the plants, are they going to cross pollinate, or mostly just keep them themselves, and then you just got to kind of select from the like inline breeding itself?
Yeah, they mostly, as a self-pollinating species, or mostly self-pollinating species, they'll keep to themselves. But in the lab, we are making our crosses between, varieties from one part of the U.S. to, say, another, or from other countries as well, to get that diversity in there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Ross has a question on, especially with like the relay crop and stuff. Ross is a relay cropping expert. We've been working with him on some of our trials for years now. But same with cereal harvest in the summer, in his experience, right, with cereal harvesting, rye, wheat, oats, moisture content dictates the timing a lot. And saying is that the same for pennycress? Like morning and late evening can be an issue for rye when harvesting. So like if there's still dew on the plant and stuff, or like just humidity and moisture of the crop, any anticipated issues there with harvestability based on time of day or moisture
Great
and
question.
logistics?
Yeah, so for that one, yeah, a great question. I'd imagine it could be similar to what you're seeing in those other crops, but we'd have to get back to you on that for sure.
Tim is saying, can seed coatings help with emergence and critically of versus like the rain irrigation emergence? I think he's thinking seed treatments. So is there potential for seed treatments to be able to help with this whole moisture dependency at planting time?
Yeah, there's definitely opportunity there, and also having some seed coatings would make it easier for pennycress seed handling and planting when you're getting it into the ground in the fall.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple different biological stuff for different treatments and things that come to mind that could be worth playing around with as time goes on. But
Mhm.
okay, Matt Levitt from the Forever Green group at University of Minnesota, so that's great. And thanks, Matt, for hopping on. But he's asking about the regulatory issues with feeding pennycress meal to animals, the high glucosinate, I think glucosinate.
Oh,
I don't
glucosinolate.
glucosinate. Yeah.
Yeah,
What you
yeah, there
say?
you go. Yeah,
Issues with that. Is that still a concern in the meal? Which is a key. That's gonna be a key, for commercial availability. So this is some of the toxins that are in the meal. So you crush the oil out. You still have the meal that's left over. There's a potential toxin issue in there that we need to speak to. And he says that they've been working with two commercially launched pennycress varieties from the Minnesota program with covercress, but even they have not received regulatory approval to take commercial pennycress fields into harvest yet. With just some of these meal issues, how are you guys approaching the meal toxicity side of things?
sure. Yeah, so the glucosinolates, you're probably already familiar with those. Those are like the mustardy tasting compounds that you'll experience when you're biting into a hot dog or a pretzel. And so the thing is, like, I wouldn't call them toxic, but if you're, say, a cow or a pig, just eating straight mustard it may not taste that good. And
Yeah.
so that's why, or one of the reasons why, people like at the University of Minnesota and also Covercress are trying to get rid of those. There are a few different ways to remove glucosinolates from the seed. Like you can chemically, like after uh, uh, crushing it, you could chemically treat it. You could also, and this is coming from the U of M, treat the seed as silage. And so then you have bacteria break down those glucosinolate components and then make uh, the meal more nutritious also, in addition to removing those glucosinolates. The other thought there is you can also use the meal not for animal feed. You could perhaps use it for like what's the word I'm looking for? Like liquid natural gas, or you can use the glucosinolates as an organic herbicide. You can yeah
Okay,
do
so a couple different options. So
yeah.
so it's not necessarily that the meal is like toxic or harmful to the animals. It's just it's not going to taste very good and can throw off feed efficiencies and stuff if we don't
Yeah,
take care.
that's more so the concern
Okay.
as I understand it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But there's still some hurdles there. So it may have to just be if you're going to feed the meal, you may have to just feed at a very low rate so it's blended in and kind of diluted in that manner, or basically turned into silage and
Mhm.
let it ferment for a while and
Yeah,
take care of itself, or yeah, use it for some of these other things. And what you're getting at with the renewable natural gas is put it in a digester as a feedstock for a
exactly.
digester, and then therefore then it's not going into an animal supply chain at all. You're creating more low carbon renewable fuel out of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool. Matt's also asked about insurance and any status with insurance. Um, and he's saying just putting a flag out there that camelina is making progress as well. And sounds like Cargill's got maybe a program for camelina. We've used camelina on our farm twice, just in cover crop blends. We've never tried to harvest it, but I'm not fully bought in yet in my neck of the woods. But we're seeing seeing mixed results. Still very bullish on it long term, just like these other things. But the question specifically on insurance: is there any insurance, or
Yeah. So there isn't any like federal crop insurance for pennycress yet. I expect that that will change from maybe the work we're doing, or again covercress or other players out there. But for now, for the farmer, what we're offering is just like um, a guarantee that is supported by the funds that we're raising through venture capital, and with the revenue that we're expecting to get as we scale up.
I had not been paying attention to the clock. It's like 1 o'clock.
Oh shoot,
Do you guys have to jump at? Is your next meeting at 1?
I could keep going,
We can keep
but
going a little
I
bit.
do
Okay,
want
me
to be
too.
mindful of everyone else.
For anyone that has to jump, feel free. Maybe just a little plug before you do for our TopSoil Summit as well, June 10th. Definitely something to look at. Registration is now open. But anyway, okay, yeah, a lot of questions here, so let's just keep hammering through them. I'll try to go faster. Dad is saying, okay, a low planting rate sounds like a perfect opportunity for drone seeding. And so, what do you think about that? Seeding with a drone, maybe being able to seed it earlier in the year, is that an option?
Yeah, for drone planting, or just broadcasting, we what we've seen, and by we I mean like the pennycress community, is you get a bit higher yields if you are drilling it in.
Huh.
But with that earlier planting date, yeah, that could
Maybe
be
worth an
substantial.
experiment, but
Yeah,
probably not the main thing.
yeah.
Scott was asking a similar one there. Uh, I brought up the terminating it early, but a question on would the oil content or quality be impacted by terminating it early? Do we know yet? Or
Good question. I don't think we know yet.
um, he's asking, do we need to modify in order to store it in a bin? Would there be any adjustments that you need to make to put it into a bin, or like any handling concerns like that?
I wouldn't imagine so. None that I could think of.
I think what we're how we were thinking about it is we're harvesting this stuff early enough that it's going to be before any of our cereal crop harvest, so we can just store the crop in wagons, trucks, do it that for now because it's going to be really short term if we can have things coordinated to harvest it and quite soon after crush it, and now we don't have the product that we got to try to store in a bin. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Same here.
I know some of these other similar crops, they're really soft seeds and stuff, and you got to be really careful with handling. Is that the same concern here? Or are these seeds a little tougher from a handling perspective?
From what I've worked with, they seem to be a bit tougher. There might be varieties out there that have like this more golden appearance because they don't have as thick of a seed coat. And these were developed by Minnesota and also Covercress. Maybe they might be a bit softer, but they also have like some benefits that they have less fiber also for, so it's better for animal feed, and they are known to germinate more uniformly. Also on that note, I also wanted to say that, like, with respect to U of M and Covercrest, like I feel like this is a all hands on deck kind of thing with Pennycrest getting it out in the world, and yeah, happy to partner with
Yeah.
really anyone who wants to.
Dad was saying too, from the harvesting, that seed size being very similar to mustard. And we did harvest some mustard or canola a couple years ago on our farm. And our case combine did a great job of harvesting. We had very little go out the back and very small seed size. We just really dialed in the sieves, adjusted the fan speed and all that because you can't have a lot of air blow it all out the back. But we got it dialed in and it worked really, really well. So, yeah, good stuff there. Okay, if you crush on the farm, what are you going to do with that product? We kind of talked about some of that already, but any other hot take on the meal and stuff?
Yeah, so I guess
I
if you
think
crush
we
on the farm, that gives us the opportunity to take the meal and the oil to whatever the closest off takers are, as opposed to say like taking the whole seed, say like across a few states, and then crushing it, and then like we're bound to whatever's closest off takers around the crush plant. So
yeah.
it just gives us more flexibility, is what I'm saying.
That was one of the questions here. May I'll jump to. What is what are you guys thinking right now for target geography for this coming fall? What are a couple key areas you'd like to hit on? Well,
Yeah,
obviously we're talking here
Ricardo,
in Southeast Iowa, but what are some of the other ones?
So we got Iowa, 100%. We're also looking at Colorado very closely. We're looking at Texas as well, California. And I'm very surprised that Hawaii is on that list. But Hawaii is now on that list as well. But yeah, that list also will grow as we keep talking to more and more off takers.
Yeah.
So all in all, we're going to build a map where all those off takers are and where all the farmers are, and then match them based off of that proximity.
Yeah. So a lot of these other guys are Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, throughout Corn Belt or
Okay, yeah,
Southeast.
that works. Yeah,
Okay.
Illinois, 100%.
Be all right. I think the answer on all this is more so if you're interested, if you have interest, you can contact these guys or hit me up and I can connect you, and then we'll see as it comes closer. Like, okay, are we going to be able to actually make a go at this? One of the other ideas is to be able to grow the seed, but then or grow the crop, but then terminate it just as a normal cover crop versus attempting to actually full blown harvest it if we're trying to small scale, just from an agronomic perspective. May have to be a thing at the beginning here.
Yeah, that's correct. Like on both of your points on like our geographies, and also if say for whatever reason the pennycress just isn't like looking good, it's at least for you some cover crop if we can't harvest it in time, or if it's not worth it, because yeah, we still want you to get the highest yields you can on your corn and your soy or whatever you're growing.
Yeah, that's really my big kind of sticking point in all this too. Thinking out loud for everyone is, okay, can we make the economics work, make a little bit, and kind of do some cool experimenting over the winter? Sweet, yeah, sure, let's do it. The big concern is going to be, I got to make sure that I don't screw up my yield and my normal system on my corn and soybeans. And that's where we really like the relay cropping, where we've been harvesting rye or wheat as a relay crop, because there we've been able to prove that we can make some money on the winter cereal and maintain really good yields on the soybeans. So that's going to be, I think, just one of the key things we have to navigate here, as this progresses. Roger, I see your hand raised. I sent you a message. If you do want to hop on and ask a question, send me a message back. I don't know if you meant to raise your hand or not, but how many acres have you harvested? I think you guys answered that. Very small scale for now for you guys directly, but in the broader community, this is scaling up.
Yep, exactly.
How many refiners? Sounds like Ricardo, you're working on like a list, but is some of that going to be able to be shared, or like that's what can be discussed one on one later as you guys are getting some of that dialed in with some of the refiners?
Well, that list that we have as of now was what you saw. So those
Oh yeah,
those 4 biorefineries plus the seed I requested Hawaii. And we're talking at 130 with another biorefinery as well.
Cool. Difference between Pennycress Company and Covercress is brought up here. Any hot take on that?
Sure. So Covercrest, they've done a fantastic job, going from, so it started by like 3 months down to like higher ups, like executives, and then working diligently, figuring out a lot, and then they were finally purchased. They saved around $200 million in 2022 by Bayer, Chevron, and Bunge. So what they've done is they've really shown that an idea with Pennycress like ours could work. But what we're doing is we're working in different geographies. We're working with different traits. Also, as they were purchased, by Bayer and such, we're like a smaller company trying to help out like the farmers, and with a culture that's less corporate, but hopefully we're aiming to be more, I guess, uh, farmer friendly
Just
and
partnering with the farmers and stuff, and navigating the players that are involved kind of from scratch at your early stage and growing that way, right? But
Mhm.
and it's good. Yeah. So RT that's been asking a bunch of questions said he's grown covercress in the past, had good luck with it. So that's good to
Yeah,
hear. So
yeah, exactly.
um, and yeah, it's my understanding that their main focus, very much around kind of the St. Louis area and east of St. Louis, southern Illinois, is where their main focus is. You guys are a little bit earlier stage, experimental, trying to look more broadly from an agronomic perspective. Where should the focus areas end up being?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
my take.
Yeah, there just needs to be more companies out there, frankly, working on Pennycrest, getting it out into the world. Like even the former CEO of Covercrest had said, it's not just going to be Pennycrest; it's going to be all kinds of oil seeds, all kinds of solutions, and
For sure.
we're one of them.
That leads right into Braylon's question here. What about other winter oil seeds like canola, camelina? What's your take on what separates Pennycrest from those other winter oil seed alternatives?
Yeah. So from my experience, as you know, my background is in plant science. It's really the genetics that are inherent to the plant that we can much more easily improve in pennycress than we can in these other crops. It's a lot simpler, like from the genetic standpoint, and easier
Okay.
to engineer and make that increase in yield happen pretty rapidly. Also, pennycress already has higher yields than camelina, generally speaking, and yeah, that's the main thing I'd
Yeah,
say.
cool. Um, wondering how it's going to handle higher levels of residue, like after corn. It might be similar to camelina and canola and struggle a little bit. Do you think that's going to be the case with planting small seeded crop into a lot of residue?
Yeah, so what others have seen, like in the pennycress community, working with pennycress, is that residue hadn't been such a problem, that it established just fine.
Okay, so hopefully not a concern. Um,
Mhm.
and get a little seed to soil contact, and hopefully it'll be okay.
Yeah,
I like it. All right, well, hey, good job. We cranked through all of
you
those,
did.
which is great. We still got a good group of our crowd hanging out too. So to wrap things up, thanks you guys for hopping on. Hopefully, a lot of farmers that want to have some more discussions here over the coming months and navigate. Is there an opportunity here and give it a shot? We're still working through it. Like I said, from our side too, on like what should we do and how do we approach this? Just bullish on it over the long term. It's when do we jump in and um, how do we get the ball rolling? So, but no, good stuff. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Any final comments on you guys' side?
Well, the one thing I can say is if you are interested in joining this trials coming up in our 2026 winter upcoming, you can go on thepennycresscompany.com/farmers and you will see our wait list on there. And it's just a quick survey. Be able to have your information there. And if you're not selected for this first round, where we're working with the biorefiners we're working with now, still send in the information because we'll have you for future rounds as well. So we'll have that opportunity ongoing.
Yeah. One last question came in. What about any issues with residual herbicide? Have you guys seen any of that?
Good
Section.
question. Um, I vaguely remember seeing some recommendations that you may not want to say. Um, use like such and such herbicide right before growing your field of pennycress. I wish I could tell you what exactly those were, but it could be a concern, I guess, is the short answer.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to navigate through it. It's just like with any other cover crops, and as we're getting creative with it, we got to be mindful of residuals. But okay, we need to let everyone go. Thanks everyone for hanging out. This has been recorded. We'll get it sent out for folks that want to go back and go through stuff, and we will keep the rest of the ball rolling. But we better let you guys go. Good luck with the sales meeting here at the bottom of the hour.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you on the next TopSoil webinar. Have a good day.